fastest growing fields, and I was unable to get the data on Canada on that. But salaries in either country are not what they should be. In the US, the average salary of a public relations person is about $60,000. And if you look at it in Canadian dollars, it's about 50,000. And that's the average here. So it's about pretty much the same. It's not that different. That doesn't mean that there aren't people who have become millionaires and people who've done all kinds of fabulous things in our industry, but we still have to look at the mean and what attracts people to it. And obviously salaries are tied to fees, which are tied to service, which is tied to value. But when a newly minted MBA from one of the leading business schools in the Ivy League in the US or the best schools in Canada can walk into with their MBA degree and start with a low six-figure salary in many corporations, that it is unlikely they're going to get that in our field. And I feel that that is an issue that we have to deal with because we definitely need more strong, senior, seasoned business thinkers in our industry. Well, look, I am a pragmatic optimist. I make it never to underestimate the power of the dream and the greatness of the human spirit. And I found a quote that I really liked from the late Pierre Trudeau. And this is a paraphrase. Our hopes are high, our faith in the people is great, our courage is strong, and our dreams will never die. My dreams for the golden age of public relations accompany a world where our business is booming, the economy is flourishing. Clients are clamoring for our opinion, and talented people are drawn to our industry because they want the challenges and the rewards that we can provide. And also that there will be universal recognition for the value of our service. So, welcome to the first day of the golden age of public relations, and thank you very much for your attention. Any questions? None? Okay.
What tips do you have or advice for trying to influence? You mentioned about trying to get into the C-suite, and if you're not, what tips do you have?
I didn't hear you. Trying to get into what?
Trying to influence chief executives to see the value of communications. What tips or advice would you have?
Well, I think that you've hit upon a serious issue. I think that we all have to contend with, but I think a lot of the points that I've made in my speech are important. I basically use case studies of similar situations that could happen. Most CEOs, I find, get it fairly quickly on the crisis front because they've seen what's happened in the press. Although there was a quote that I read just a couple days ago from Sony that had all the problems in Japan, from the CEO who was here in the United States. And he said, I don't think that the kind of disaster that we've experienced in Japan is anything that we could have ever planned for or had the tools in our toolkit to deal with. And I don't agree with him about that. I think that on the crisis front that many CEOs and many companies they want to deal with what's at hand. They don't plan in advance. There are some that do, but even those that do, in my opinion, it requires scenario planning, where you have to set up 6 or 10 of the most likely scenarios. On the other side of the business, in terms of the proactivity, I think more sophisticated CEOs today understand, but if they don't, that it's a stakeholder, not just a stockholder mentality. And with the advent of the internet and the ability to have the feedback that any constituency of the company has at his or her access, that the company really has to be kind of foolish to sit back and not employ active public relations in terms of monitoring and building relationships with those particular constituencies, because any one person, and we've all heard this before, can bring down a company. So I feel it has to, you know, or that kind of Burger King example, I don't think that a lot of CEOs and a lot of people in this world really are willing to accept a reality until it happens to them. But I do think it's important to cover that in your any engagement you have. Yep.
And isn't that part of the tension that I see, is that PR people understand the cost can be greater of not getting PR right. So we are looking at the risks, so we are looking at what can go wrong. And a lot of people in C-suites want to be optimists, forward, and I wish you'd start bringing up what could go wrong here. You know, or like an environmental thing happens that's small, and we'll say, no, it's probably going to come back to bite you. And they kind of want to push on. And it's how do you balance, how have you found balancing out those two?
Well, you know, I think any CEO today who has that attitude is looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. I mean,
But I find a lot of them really want those glasses. You know?
Well, you know, I think that's true, but to me, you have to, sometimes I think it's a good idea to, and I recently asked a client of ours if I could sit down and have a meeting with the chairman, it's the large company chairman, president, CFO, and do a basic seminar in PR 101 so that they understand what the business really does. And he's kind of thinking about that because they're not as savvy as they should be. They're more a little like what you're describing. So I think getting to top management either through the head of corporate communications or directly yourself is very critical to explain it. You know, you can't make people who refuse to listen change their mind. But I think in today's environment, again, with the transparency of the internet, that it would have to be any CEO who is that thick, I don't think is going to last very long in his job or her job.
Good news.